Symphonia of Sword and Sorcery, a legendary romance action RPG centered around a hero and his group of heroines aiming to defeat the Demon King. Set in the Royal Academy of the Kingdom of Clarnell, it's a world I've played through countless times. For some reason, I've been reincarnated right into it. My name is Lest Albion. I'm a villainous noble destined to die halfway through the story. At this rate, I'm definitely a goner. Everything started a few days ago during the Divine Oracle Ceremony, a special ritual where 14-year-olds receive a skill from the goddess. The skill I was granted was Tame. The crowd couldn't believe it. A garbage skill that only controls horses and pigeons. My father, Gad Albion, was furious that a non-combat skill would come from a bloodline of elite swordsmen. My twin brothers, Edward and Sid Ward, just laughed at how pitiful I was. That's when I remembered everything. I'm a character in the game I used to play, but I'm in the villain's role, destined to be killed by the Demon King's army. In the game, Tame is a worthless skill for controlling livestock. But as a hardcore player who cleared every route, I know the truth about less unique ability. It can even control monsters. In the original story, the real Les didn't realize this until years of persecution had already twisted his heart, leading him to use it for evil. That power eventually made him a target for the Demon King's army. If I follow the script, I'll die. To survive, I have to find a way to crush that death flag. There's only one answer. I'll use my knowledge of the game to become strong enough to take over a country with one hand. There's exactly 1 year left until the main story begins. Time to get to work. I have a mountain of things to do if I want to survive. I'm currently at dinner with my family, and the tension is high. Gad Albion is counting on the twins for today's training report, while the first wife mocks me for having a trash skill. Edward and Sid Ward are all fired up to show off. Edward suggests I should have been born into a family of livestock handlers or coachmen. Gad doesn't even want to hear a word from me. The twins keep at it, suggesting I find a dog to tame while they head off to their elite sword training. I just excuse myself and leave. A week has passed since my memories returned. I've been out in the woods alone, piecing things together. I can't check my stats, but the level-up system definitely exists here. The basic rule is that I can only tame monsters I personally defeat. To control the heavy hitters, I need to boost my stats through an old game exploit called Midnight Training. In the game, you could only choose one of 5 training types per day. But in this world, I'm not limited to just one session. I could do every single one daily. Next up is Magic Refinement. My physical stats are already way above average compared to my past life, and the refinement session goes surprisingly smooth. In the game, Les was always a lazy slacker. Seeing how hard he actually worked before the despair set, it makes me realize just how much he must have struggled. I decide to save the final training for later and head back to the estate, but my brothers are already waiting for me. They mock me for not having a dog yet. Sid Ward reminds me that having no sword skill means I have no right to attend their training. These twins are as hopeless as always. Suddenly, a massive pressure hits the area. A woman with long blonde hair shouts that they're going hard again today. The sheer intensity she radiates is overwhelming. She drags a massive, bleeding earth dragon behind her like it's nothing, casually mentioning she took it down on the way. My brothers are absolutely terrified. This is Elna Lubreisel. She's only 18, but she's already an S-rank adventurer and a genius swordswoman. She's the one training my brothers. Elna never appeared in the original game. Seeing her power up close is seriously overwhelming. I can't help but wish I could be trained by someone like her. 2 hours later, at the Albion family's training hall, Elna is putting the twins through the ringer. She asks them what's wrong as they struggle to keep up. I watch from the shadows, amazed. Even with sword-type skills, they're getting treated like toddlers by her. She demands they get back up. Finally, the session ends. The twins are completely spent. I know I can raise my stats through solo training, but there's a limit to how far that will take me. I can't afford to waste this chance. Elna only visits the estate once a month. To learn real combat skills, I need her guidance. I can't let this opportunity slip by. She notices me watching and asks if I need something. I step out from my hiding spot, my heart racing as she looks right at me. I introduce myself, as Lest Albion. She's already heard about me, the one who was granted the Tame skill. I don't let it faze me and look her in the eye. I get straight to the point and beg her to teach me how to fight with a sword. I tell her clearly that I want to get stronger. Elna is skeptical. Tame isn't a combat skill, and she doesn't think I could survive her regimen without a sword-type skill. But I don't back down. I insist that I still want to learn. She kicks a wooden sword toward me, challenging me to prove I'm worth training. I catch it, ready for whatever comes next. This is my chance. She charges instantly. She's so fast I can barely track her movements. I barely manage to bring my sword up in time. Our swords clash with a heavy thud. She tells me to prove my resolve with my own hands. Her speed is frightening, and every strike feels like a ton of bricks. She's on a completely different level. Even while holding back, one slip in my guard, and I'll black out in an instant. I'm pushed to the absolute limit. She shouts at me to get up and not fall apart. I focus everything I have on figuring out just one thing from this exchange, refusing to give in. I have no idea how long it's been, but my legs finally give out. I collapse onto the stone ground, gasping for air. I can't even hold myself up anymore. She tells me it wasn't even close. My physical ability barely meets the minimum, and I'm a total beginner in swordsmanship. Then she asks me the real question. Why do I seek power? Elna stares him down. She wants to know if he's doing this to surpass his brothers, or if there's some other reason behind it. Les doesn't hesitate. He shouts that he wants to win against fate itself. The intensity in his voice catches her off guard. She gives in. 30 minutes of instruction every time she finishes training the twins. It's not much, but to Les it's everything. Elna lets him keep the wooden sword as a parting gift. She won't be back for another month, so it's up to him to train as much as possible until then. 2 months later, Les is still at it. He's deep into his training with Elna, and the intensity has only ramped up since they started. They clash in the training hall, the wooden swords echoing through the room. Elna keeps pushing him, mocking his predictable movements. She tells him he's getting easier to read. She orders him to go for a thrust next, giving him zero room to catch his breath. The exchange is a blur of movement. Les is trying to keep up with an S-rank adventurer, and he's barely hanging on by a thread. He tries a feint, but Elna hops back effortlessly. She calls it a mistake to back off without following through, though Les is already planning his next move. Les knows that in this world, techniques are just as essential as skills, maybe even more. They're what let a fighter exceed their own physical limits. He's managed to learn one of the finishing moves from the game. He readies his stance, gripping the wooden hilt with everything he's got. It's a single strike move that massively boosts sword speed and power. Blade surge, full drive. The air around him seems to hum with energy. He activates flash step, launching himself forward like a bullet. The speed is unlike anything he's shown before. Elna's eyes widen in genuine shock. She wasn't expecting him to pull off a move of that caliber. It catches her completely off guard. The wooden sword misses her by a hair. Elna admits that was close, but Les is frustrated that he still couldn't land a solid hit. Les is collapsed on the ground, sweat dripping from his face. After 2 months of blood, sweat, and tears, the gap between them still feels like an ocean. Elna is internally reeling. Flash Step was designed specifically for sword skill users. For someone without a combat class to pull it off in just 2 months is insane. It should have taken a year minimum. She tells him to keep it up, and Les just nods. He's pushing himself harder than anyone realizes. Maybe he can actually do this. He's raising himself to be a total monster. He won't let his trash skill define what he's capable of in this new life. I'm Lest Albion, a villainous noble who's supposed to die halfway through the story. It's a role I never asked for, but one I'm stuck with. But I've decided to use my knowledge of the game to avoid that fate. Aiming for the top is the only way I'm going to make it out alive. A month and a half has passed since then. Thanks to having a world-class mentor, my power has been growing at an incredible rate. Every session leaves me stronger. Up to this point, everything has gone smoothly. As long as I stay away from the main characters who are supposed to become my enemies, I should be fine. But then my father drops a bombshell. Charlotte, the second princess, is coming to visit our estate. My heart nearly stops at the news. Charlotte von Finale. She's one of the main heroines in Symphony of Sword and Magic. Hearing her name makes me break out in a cold sweat. To me, she's a walking death flag. She's the last person in this world I want to be around right now. My past life's knowledge is screaming at me to run. If I had to describe her in one phrase, she's the perfect princess. Everyone loves her, and for good reason. She's everything a royal should be. She's pure-hearted, kind, and quick to befriend anyone. Despite her extraordinary talent, she trains harder than anyone to protect her people. She's basically a living saint. And because she's that kind of person, she couldn't forgive the original Lest's actions. She was the one who stood against him when he went off the rails. In the game, she confronts the rampaging Lest alongside the protagonist. She's the literal hero to my villain. This visit is the last thing I need. According to the lore, there shouldn't have been any connection between Lest and Charlotte this early. I can't figure out why this is happening now. Something is off. My father explains that Elna is also the royal family sword instructor. Apparently, Charlotte heard from her about a talented young swordsman in the Albion family and wants to meet him. The twins are ecstatic, thinking the princess is actually interested in them. I can't believe Elna and Charlotte were connected like this. It makes too much sense. It's clear now. The reason the game's scenario changed is because I got involved with Elna. My own actions are starting to ripple through the world. If Elna mentioned a young swordsman she's interested in, it's almost certainly me. The twins think she was bragging about them behind their backs, but I know better. There's no way she meant these two. 2 weeks later, the day of the visit arrives. The estate is buzzing with activity. Everyone is on their best behavior for the royal guest. At last, the day is here. If possible, I'd rather stay as far away from her as I can. Dealing with someone I have such a dark history with in the game is the last thing I want. The twins barge in and ask what I'm doing. They order me to get out of the castle, telling me I'm in no position to meet the princess and would only be a distraction. I just nod and agree to leave. It's the perfect out. They think they're insulting me, but they just gave me exactly what I wanted. Nice assist, guys. Now I just need to figure out how to pass the time until she's gone. It's about time I test my skills against some actual monsters anyway. This is as good a chance as any. I head toward the Arse Forest, a known monster habitat on our territory. It's usually off limits until you enroll in the Royal Academy, but I'm not exactly a rule follower anymore. Standing out too much right now would be a hassle, so I'll just pass on the royal meeting. Time to put my Tame skill to use and get some real subordinates. Princess Charlotte von Finale has arrived at the Albion estate. Her presence seems to brighten the room, her aura radiant and calm as she accepts the family's hospitality. Gad Albion welcomes her warmly, noting that she was recently granted the prestigious Holy Sword Princess skill. It's a mark of her incredible potential and a point of pride for the royal family. The twin brothers, Edward and Sid Ward, are awestruck. They know that her skill is legendary, boosting both magical and physical prowess beyond almost any other known skill. Charlotte politely asks if she could observe their training session. Gad immediately orders his sons to escort Her Highness to the training grounds. The twins are more than happy to oblige, seeing this as their chance to impress the princess. The sparring begins. Edward and Sid Ward put on a dramatic display, shouting and clashing their blades with as much flair as they can muster to show off their power. Watching from the sidelines is Charlotte and her personal maid, Estella. Estella, a capable warrior who always stays by the princess's side, remains silent while Charlotte quietly critiques their performance. To her, there's nothing particularly impressive about their level of skill. The twins notice Charlotte's lack of reaction. Panicking, they realize a simple mock battle isn't going to be enough to win her over or demonstrate their superiority. They quickly pivot, suggesting that they demonstrate their true strength through real combat by hunting monsters in the nearby Arst Forest. They hope the change of setting will make them look more heroic. They boast that the forest is practically their own backyard, promising to protect her from any danger. In reality, they've never actually set foot inside, but they're desperate to fulfill their father's orders and gain her favor at any cost. Charlotte agrees to the proposal, curious to see how the brothers handle themselves in a real fight instead of just a controlled spar. As they enter the Arst forest, the atmosphere shifts dramatically. The thick canopy blocks out the sun, leaving the area in an eerie, perpetual twilight that puts everyone on edge. The twins try to maintain their bravado, telling Charlotte not to worry. Meanwhile, Charlotte starts to wonder about the other Albion son she'd heard about, the one who's supposedly in the same grade as her, but is nowhere to be seen. When she asks about Lest, the twins are quick to dismiss him with a sneer. They mockingly claim he stepped away because he knew he wasn't worthy of her time, laughing about his supposedly useless Tame skill. Their laughter is cut short by a low, menacing growl from the undergrowth. Estella is the first to react, her hand immediately moving toward her weapon as she senses immediate danger. A pack of errant gray wolves emerges from the shadows, eyes glowing with hunger. Despite their low rank, the sight of actual monsters sends a wave of fear through the unprepared and overconfident brothers. The twins charge in, their movements frantic and uncoordinated as they shout for a coordinated strike. They manage to land several blows on the wolves, but it's clear they're way out of their depth in a real life-or-death struggle. The fight is over quickly, but Edward and Sid Ward are left gasping for air and trembling. They're completely exhausted from facing just 3 low-level monsters, their earlier boasting completely forgotten in the harsh reality of combat. Estella senses the wind shifting and tells the princess they need to leave right now. Edward and Sid Ward aren't worried, bragging about how they'll cut down any monster that dares to show up. A sudden roar shatters the confidence of the group. Out from the trees steps a massive C-rank gale wolf. The siblings freeze, realizing they've stumbled into something far beyond their level. The beast lunges, immediately overpowering the twins. Estella orders the brothers to take Charlotte and run while she holds the line. They take off into the woods, but the forest isn't making it easy to escape. The wolf is right on their heels. Just as they think they're safe, a second wolf, even bigger than the first, blocks their path. The twins start to panic, realizing there's no way they can win this. Edward tries to strike, but his sword just bounces off the monster's hide. Charlotte is left wide open as the boys are pushed aside. The Gale Wolf lunges for the kill. She braces for the worst, hoping her guard can reach her in time. Realizing the beast is using wind magic, Charlotte tries to muster a holy spell. She's too slow to finish the chant. A shadow suddenly drops in, blocking the wolf's strike. A young guy stands firmly between the princess and certain death. Charlotte looks up, completely stunned by the sudden rescue. Les keeps it casual, telling her he's just an ordinary person passing by. A few minutes earlier, Les had spotted them from a distance. He realized they were heading straight into the forbidden Alst forest. He figured the twins were just trying to show off for Charlotte and would get everyone killed. If the princess dies on his family's land, his whole lineage is getting executed. He decided he had to follow them, just to be safe. Turns out his premonition was spot on. Les takes a breath, relieved he managed to stop a major death flag for his family. He doesn't want to blow his cover, so he pretends he's just a random commoner. Charlotte is confused. There's no way a commoner could have that kind of presence. Les tells him to stay back, so he can handle the monster. He knows the odds are technically against him, but he's got game knowledge to exploit. He closes the gap in an instant. He weaves through the wolf's attacks with surgical precision. The monster is a powerhouse at any range, but Lest is reading it like a book. Since he knows all its attack patterns, he lands a heavy blow right on its snout. Charlotte watches in awe, unable to believe what she's seeing. Even with her elite training, she can't match the physical ability he's showing. It brings back memories of her training sessions with Elna. She remembers how hard she worked because she refused to lose to anyone. Elna had warned her that her rivals wouldn't just be people with high-grade skills. She spoke of those who reached the top through sheer effort, and Charlotte realizes she's looking at one of them. In a flashback, Elna tells Charlotte about a boy from the Albion family who's the same age as her. Estella notes she's never seen Lady Elna speak so excitedly about anyone before. Elna suggests they meet sometime, thinking he'd be a great source of motivation for Charlotte. Back in the present, Charlotte stares at the boy who just saved her, realizing this must be Lest Albion. She's heard rumors about him being granted a useless tame skill, yet here he is showing incredible strength. Seeing his skill firsthand, she realizes Lady Elna wasn't exaggerating about him. The fight isn't over yet. The Garl Wolf is still standing, and Lest is starting to feel the strain. He's burnt through most of his mana using magic early on, and is nearly running on empty. Knowing he only has one shot left, he prepares to press the attack as the beast lunges. As the wolf snaps at him, Lest jams his wooden sword right into its jaws to hold it back. The beast thrashes wildly, but Lest refuses to let go. With a final surge of effort, he prepares to deliver a finishing blow. He uses a high-speed technique, moving like a flash of light. The impact sends the massive wolf crashing into the ground with a deafening thud. Lest stands over the downed beast, catching his breath as the dust settles. Charlotte can only watch in silence, completely floored by the display of power. She rushes over to congratulate him, but Lest remains focused, knowing the real work is just starting. For someone with his unique skill, defeating the monster is only the first step. Charlotte thanks him from the bottom of her heart, deeply impressed by his courage. She introduces herself as Princess Charlotte and notices he carries the same type of training sword she received from Elna. Lest plays it off, claiming he only saved her because he didn't want his family to face execution for her safety. Charlotte gives him a bright, grateful smile that catches him off guard. He's surprised to realize she actually knows his name. Wanting to change the subject, he asks the princess to look after his brothers while he goes to check on the wolf. He approaches the beast, which is still groaning on the ground. A system message pops up, informing him that the Garl Wolf is interested in serving the one who defeated it. This is exactly what he was hoping for, his first chance to use his skill on a real monster. He looks the predator in the eye, sensing its submission. He commands the beast to become his first servant. The taming is a success, and he immediately feels a surge of new power as he acquires wind magic. On top of the magic, he's granted an extra-dimensional space to house his new subordinate. He realizes his skill is even more broken than he thought. It lets him absorb the literal strength of his pets. Now, all the wind-based abilities that almost killed him are officially his to command. He knows the original Lest in the game failed by getting cocky, so he vows to never stop training. With this kind of potential, he's more determined than ever to reach the top. Looking at his new pet, he decides its species name is way too long to keep saying. He gives it a proper name, Garl, and the wolf seems to take a liking to it. Since he's not ready to reveal his true power to the world, he needs to keep the wolf hidden for now. He activates his new skill to send Garl into the extra-dimensional residence. The wolf disappears into a portal, leaving no trace behind. Just then, Estella finally arrives, frantically checking to make sure the princess hasn't been hurt. Charlotte explains that another wolf appeared, but they managed to drive it off, while his brothers lie defeated in the background. Charlotte enthusiastically points out that Lest is the one who came to her rescue. Estella is skeptical, wondering how a boy with a useless skill could have defeated such a high-rank monster so quickly. Lest notices the maid's confusion, finding it amusing that her professional mask is slipping so easily. Charlotte beams at him, her gratitude practically sparkling in the afternoon light. Lest modestly admits he managed to drive the wolf away, though he emphasizes the danger of the battle. The atmosphere grows tense when Lest addresses Estella by name, causing her to wonder how he knows her identity. Charlotte quickly chimes in, assuming he simply overheard her calling out to Estella earlier. Estella takes the bait and offers a formal bow, thanking him for protecting the princess. Lest realizes he needs to be much more careful about using his future knowledge around people from the game. With everyone accounted for, Estella hauls the unconscious twins onto her shoulders and leads the group out of the forest. Lest rolls up carrying his unconscious brothers like sacks of potatoes, and naturally, his father Gad is losing his mind. Inside, the house is in total chaos. Gad demands to know what on earth happened while Lest just stands there, taking the heat. Gad is fuming, pointing a finger and demanding an explanation he can actually believe. He can't wrap his head around how Lest is the only one without a scratch. Before Lest has to say a word, Princess Charlotte jumps in. She makes it clear that he hasn't done anything wrong. In fact, he's the one who saved her life. Estella steps up to explain that it was the twins, Edward and Sid Ward, who led them into Alst Forest, claiming they went there all the time. That didn't end well. Gad is stunned that his boys went into such a dangerous forest alone. He tries to save face by saying he never gave them permission. Estella isn't letting him off that easy. She reminds him that as the head of the house, the responsibility for their reckless behavior falls squarely on him. Charlotte tries to play peacemaker, admitting they shouldn't have just taken the twins' word for it. Then she drops the bombshell. Lest defeated a sea-ring Garlwolf all by himself. She smiles, telling them she wants the whole matter dropped as a thank you for Lest saving her life. Lest just keeps his usual poker face. Gad is staring at Lest in total disbelief. Charlotte politely asks to be shown to her room so she can rest up. Before she leaves, Charlotte turns back to Lest and tells him she wants to greet him properly later. Gad is still processing the news, looking like he's seen a ghost. Lest watches them walk away, while his father is stuck in a loop, muttering about how impossible it is for his worthless son to have pulled that off. Gad is absolutely seething. He just can't stomach the idea of Lest being the hero of the day. Lest isn't exactly bothered by his father's attitude. He's got his own things to worry about. Later that night, the mansion is quiet, but Lest is wide awake. He heads out to the balcony, thinking about squeezing in some late-night training since he can't sleep. Suddenly, someone calls out his name. He turns around and is surprised to find the princess standing right there. Charlotte, holding a small lantern, asks if he'd mind chatting for a little while. Lest agrees, keeping it polite. They stand together under the stars, and Charlotte thanks him again. She knows she might not have made it back if he hadn't rushed in. Lest tells her not to worry about it, saying he's just glad she's safe. She looks at him with a soft expression, clearly moved by his kindness. She's genuinely impressed by him, wondering if he was able to get such a skill because of the kind of person he is. To her, his swordsmanship was nothing short of amazing. Lest tries to downplay it, suggesting she probably weakened the monster before he even got there. He's not one for taking extra credit. Charlotte just giggles and says the whole experience was a wake-up call for how much she still has to learn. She's staring off into the distance, deep in thought. She turns back to him, her gaze much more determined now. She tells him she's made a decision based on what happened today. Lest looks at her, realizing the atmosphere is getting a little too intense for his liking. He starts sweating, thinking she's about to drop a romantic confession right then and there. He wasn't prepared for this level of drama. Instead, she leans forward and asks him to become her sword friend. Not exactly what he was expecting. Lest is visibly confused, so she explains. She wants a rival, someone she can compete with and strive alongside. Charlotte admits that her mentor Elna is just way too strong for her to catch up to right now. But Lest? He's the same age and feels like he's just one step ahead. She's convinced that having a friendly competition with someone like him will help her grow much faster. She's really pushing for this. Lest isn't thrilled about getting tangled up with main characters, but since she's so persistent, he agrees. He figures it might be useful later. Charlotte is absolutely thrilled. She beams at him, clearly happy to have a new training partner. She tells him to drop the formalities and just call her Charo. Lest tries to argue that their social standings are too different, but she's not having any of it. Seeing she won't take no for an answer, Lest gives in and calls her Charo. She looks like she's won a major victory. They end the night on the balcony, both looking forward to whatever sword friend activities they'll be doing in the future. The next morning, Charo is ready to head back to the capital. She waves goodbye to Lest, already excited about their future rivalry. Lest and Gad see her off at the carriage. Lest keeps it formal, while Gad is bowing low, probably just glad the ordeal is over. It's the start of an unlikely alliance. The worthless noble and the princess are now officially rivals. As the carriage rolls away, Gad's face twists into a scowl. He's still incredibly bitter that Lest was the one she took an interest in. He immediately starts screaming at Edward and Sidward. He's furious that their stupidity almost ruined the family's reputation. Their mother tries to stand up for them, claiming they were just trying to follow orders and make a good impression. Gad isn't listening. Gad points right at Lest, demanding to know how the twins are going to take responsibility for the princess getting interested in his worthless son. Lest just watches the family drama unfold with a deadpan look, not really understanding what responsibility he's supposed to be worried about. Edward and Sid Ward are straight up lying to their father, Gad Albion, claiming they did all the heavy lifting and Les just stole the final kill. Gad is all too happy to believe his worthless son is a fraud. Les just stands there with a deadpan look while the twins double down, insisting he took advantage of the chaos to trick the princess. They're really laying it on thick. Gad is convinced. He tells himself it all makes sense now. There's no way a failure like Les could actually be strong. He's ready to bring the hammer down. Lest is internally rolling his eyes, calling his brothers absolute idiots. He remembers how pathetic their stances were in the forest and knows they didn't land a single real hit. Gad goes into full rage mode, screaming at Les to know his place. Les doesn't flinch, calmly stating that he's the one telling the truth. Les tells his father point blank that he defeated the monster. Gad just sneers and challenges him to prove it right then and there. The solution? A duel. Gad orders Les to fight both of his brothers at the same time. If he's as strong as he claims, this should be easy, right? Gad is sure this will expose Les' lies. Les looks at him, realizing exactly what kind of trap his father is trying to set. The twins think this is a splendid idea. They're totally okay with a 2-on-1 fight if it means they get to humiliate their brother publicly. Les analyzes his brothers. Individually, they aren't pushovers, and normally, a handicap match like this would be unwinnable. But that was the old Lest. With Geralt tamed and his stats through the roof, the logic of the past just doesn't apply anymore. Lest accepts the challenge with a confident smirk. He's more than ready to show them how far behind they really are. The duel is officially on. Lest looks calm as ever, while the twins are already getting into their fighting stances. They move to the courtyard to settle this. The twins are looking smug, but less confidence is starting to make them a little nervous. Suddenly, a voice rings out across the grounds. Elna Lubrizel appears, announcing that she'll be the one to witness this duel. Edward and Sidward are stunned to see their master showing up out of nowhere. They definitely weren't expecting an audience this high profile. Gad is equally surprised. Elna explains that she got a message about her students being attacked and had to come see the fallout for herself. She apologizes for the intrusion, but she isn't leaving. She's curious about these rumors and wants to see exactly how this duel plays out. Gad tries to tell her it's a family matter, but Elna insists it's only right for her to act as the witness since her students are involved. Then she drops a huge secret. She's been giving Les private lessons on the side. Gad and the twins look like their brains just short-circuited. Gad is in total denial. He refuses to believe Les could ever stand a chance against his two prodigy sons, even with Elna's help. Elna stares at Les, trying to read him. She wants to see if he's actually got the skill to back up all that confidence. Gad eventually shuts up and welcomes her as the witness. Les admits to himself that a month ago, he wouldn't have lasted 5 seconds. But things are different now. Les knows he has to show off just enough to satisfy Elna without giving away his biggest secrets. Elna gives the signal, telling Les to prove his worth and show her the truth behind his claims. Les gives her a sharp nod. He's ready to stop playing nice and start winning. The setup is totally unfair. The twins have real combat gear, while Les is just holding a wooden training sword his master gave him. Edward and Sidward are looking real confident with their steel blades, ready to make quick work of their brother. Gad keeps barking from the sidelines. Meanwhile, Les is focusing on his new powers, enhanced physical ability, and wind magic. Les decides to keep his wind magic hidden for now. He's got another trick up his sleeve that doesn't involve flashy spells. Elna yells for the duel to begin. The twins charge and instantly, screaming insults at the weak punk they think they're about to crush. One twin dashes forward for a quick strike, but he's shocked when Les reacts faster than him, easily dodging the blade. He's frustrated that all his attacks are being blocked. He decides to put everything into one massive swing to end this. Panel underscore number 33, row underscore D. The twin scoffs, asking Les if he really thinks a wooden stick can stop a steel greatsword. He swings down with everything he's got. A massive clang rings out as would meet steel. The twin is horrified. How did that toy not snap? Les just smirks and drops the name of his technique, Ma-fill. Les explains that Ma-fill channels mana into the microscopic gaps of an object, turning even a wooden stick into something nearly indestructible. He tells his brother he'd never understand because he only knows how to swing a sword around blindly. The twin is absolutely seething now. In the game, this was a high-level skill requiring insane mana control. Luckily for Les, he's been training his mana refinement every single day. Now that he's tamed Geralt, his mana capacity is huge, making this advanced technique child's play. The twins are officially in trouble. The brother is struggling just to push back, sweating as he realizes his steel blade is being matched by a piece of wood. It's a total nightmare. Les lets out a shout and goes on the offensive. He's using body reinforcement to boost his strength, leaving his brothers in the dust in every category. Edward and Sid Ward are starting to sweat. They can't understand how Les suddenly has so much power when he was supposed to be a total failure. Les stands tall, wooden sword in hand. Now, he says with a predatory grin, it's my turn. He doesn't waste a second, lunging forward to meet their combined assault head-on. The twins scream that it's their turn to win, but the look in Les's eyes says otherwise. Metal clashes against wood with a loud crack. Les parries their blows with surgical precision, forcing them onto the defensive. He's moving like a blur, slipping between their attacks and landing glancing blows that rattle their teeth. One of the twins screams at him not to look away, desperate to land a single solid hit as Les continues to dominate the pace of the fight. Les easily ducks under a wide swing, mocking their sloppy form. He tells them their hips are way too high, critiquing them like a teacher mid-battle. He isn't even breaking a sweat. What's wrong? He asks, his smirk widening. We've only just begun. Gad is watching from the sidelines, his jaw practically on the floor. He can't wrap his head around how a tamer is outclassing two trained swordsmen. Elna watches in silence. She knew he was improving, but his growth rate over the last month has been absolutely abnormal, almost beyond belief. Les isn't letting his guard down yet. He knows the twins still haven't used their trump cards, and he can sense their desperation mounting. Elna reflects on the nature of skills, powers so terrifying they can overturn years of hard work in a single heartbeat. If you can't overcome that gap, you'll never advance. Les decides it's time to end this. He needs a victory so decisive that no one can complain or claim he cheated this time. The twins take a deep breath, synchronizing their mana for one final, all-out attack. They're putting everything they have left into this next move. Les feels the atmosphere shift. He knows the real fight starts right now. The twins roar as they activate their skills simultaneously, crushing avalanche and dance of acceleration. It's a pincer attack designed to crush him. Les realizes they've been hiding custom skills tailored to their specific weapons. He can't match their combined power and speed with just raw stats. Fine. Les thinks, his eyes narrowing. He didn't want to show his hand this early, but if he wants to win without a scratch, he has to play a skill of his own. Les drops into a low stance, holding his wooden sword back. My exclusive skill, he whispers, focusing his mana into the blade. He activates his wind magic, wrapping a high-frequency, vibrating layer of air around the wood. It creates a cutting edge sharper than any steel. He gives the technique its name, Tenso Kazutachi. With a single explosive burst of speed, he charges directly through the twins' coordinated attack. Everything happens in the blink of an eye. A single silver flash cuts through the courtyard, followed by a sudden, heavy silence. The twins freeze mid-swing, staring in horror as their steel blades are sheared clean through by a wooden stick. The broken pieces of their swords clatter to the ground. The reality of their defeat is literally lying at their feet. Gad and his wife are speechless. The idea of a wooden sword cutting through forged steel is scientifically impossible, yet they just saw it with their own eyes. Edward and Sidward collapse to their knees, completely broken. They can't even process the level of defeat they just experienced. Les stands over them, his voice cold. "Still want to go?" Before things can get uglier, Elna steps forward, declaring the fight over. She officially declares Les the winner. He clenches his fist, a satisfied smile finally crossing his face. Elna reiterates her judgment. Les has proven his strength beyond any doubt, leaving the twins to wallow in their shame. The twins' mother is having a total meltdown, unable to accept that the concubine's child humiliated her perfect sons. She stumbles, and Elna has to catch her. Elna looks toward Gad Albion, asking if he can finally accept the outcome. The pressure she exerts is palpable. Gad looks like he swallowed a lemon, but he has no choice. Under the watchful eye of an S-rank adventurer, he grinds out an acknowledgement of Les' victory. The twins follow their father away from the courtyard, defeated and disgraced. Les watches them go, finally feeling the weight of the Albion name lift slightly. Elna turns to Les with a soft look. She admits she was genuinely surprised by the result, but Les is just glad he didn't embarrass her as her student. She laughs, hoping this beating will finally motivate the twins to actually train instead of just relying on their names. Les starts to feel a bit nervous. He tried to keep his use of wind magic subtle, but he has a feeling Elna saw right through his trick. Sure enough, she says she has a few questions about that final strike, specifically why he hesitated for a split second before destroying their weapons. Les explains himself, admitting that he was considering other ways to subdue them without resorting to Tenso Kazutachi. He could have used their own momentum against them, but that would have likely caused friendly fire and left them both injured. He also knew that if he just outmaneuvered them, they'd find some excuse to ignore his power. Destroying their pride along with their swords was the only way to make them listen. Elna gives him a playful, knowing look. She saw every calculation he made. Les realizes he can't hide anything from a master like her. He laughs it off, saying he's still no match for her. Elna just grins, reminding him that she is his teacher, after all. Les can only groan as Elna aggressively ruffles his hair, completely messing up his look. She laughs heartily, clearly enjoying the role of the superior teacher, while Les stands there with his hair sticking out in every direction. Even after major victory, he realizes he still has a long way to go before he can truly stand on equal footing with his master. Back at the Albion estate, Les finally had a moment to breathe. He retreated to his room to test out his new extra-dimensional residence and see what it could do. He opened up a portal right in the middle of his room and called for Geralt to come on out. The wolf didn't hesitate and practically tackled him. Les had to tell the big guy to take it easy since the room was a bit cramped for a giant monster. Inside the subspace dimension, things were much more chill. Geralt shrunk down into a smaller form, while Les petted him and thanked him for the help. Les knew he owed a lot to his new partner. It was Geralt's wind magic that actually gave him the edge he needed to win that duel against his brothers. But he couldn't just coast on one win. If he wanted to survive in this world, he had to start thinking about the long game. A status window popped up with some bad news. He'd already hit his tame slot limit. 1 out of 1. That was a serious problem. If he couldn't tame more monsters, his growth was going to hit a brick wall. To get more slots, he needed to grind his skill level. Geralt didn't seem too worried about it, though, and just went back to sleep. In the original game, Les only ever had about 5 monsters. He gained strength from them, but if they ever got defeated, he'd be totally useless in a fight. He wasn't going to let that be his fate. He needed to raise his own base level alongside his monsters, so he could hold his own. Looking at the power rankings, he saw he was sitting at a C rank. He was stronger than his brothers, but he still had a long way to go to catch up to someone like Elna. He really wanted to get out into Ulst Forest to start hunting, but he knew his family wouldn't just let him wander into a danger zone. Plus, he already had a specific monster in mind for his next tame, and he wasn't going to settle for anything less. That target was waiting for him deep within the heart of the forest. It was a monster that lived among the ruins of an old cathedral, far beyond where any normal person would ever dare to go. Back in the real world, Lest woke up after a good night's sleep leaning against his giant partner. Meanwhile, Marquis Gad was still fuming. 3 months ago, he'd written off his son as a total disgrace because of that garbage Tame skill. He'd even sent out official notices to everyone that Lest was no longer in the running to become the next head of the house. Gad wanted to look like a strong, merciless lion who wouldn't tolerate any weakness in his own family. But now Lest was out here, soloing high-rank monsters and catching the eye of the second princess. The Marquis couldn't figure out how everything had flipped on him so fast. If Lest's reputation kept rising, everyone would start thinking Gad made a massive mistake by disinheriting him. To save face, he decided he had to completely eliminate Lest's place in the family, for good. He still had his eldest son, a sword saint who was actually fit to lead the Albion name, to fall back on. Gad stood by his window, realizing he couldn't just kick Lest out now that he had the princess's favor. So, he came up with a much darker plan. He'd arrange for Lest to meet his end through his own actions. He figured a tragic accident in Al's Forest would be the perfect way to solve his problem once and for all. The next morning, Gad called Lest in and gave him an official order to investigate the Al's Forest. Lest was caught off guard, but he immediately saw the upside. This was the perfect chance to level up without any distractions. Gad kept up the act, claiming there was some unusual monster activity that needed to be checked out. He told Lest that since he'd handled a Garlwolf alone, he was the only one he could entrust with the job. Lest looked at his father, knowing full well the man knew exactly how dangerous that forest was. Gad was already picturing the B-rank monsters deep in the woods that were way stronger than anything Lest had faced before. He was already planning his cover story. He'd just tell everyone that Lest got too arrogant and died because he was reckless. Lest saw right through the fake concern, but he didn't care. He finally had official permission from the head of the house to enter the forest. When Lest accepted without hesitation, Gad was actually surprised he took the bait so easily. The Marquis started acting like a proud father again, but Lest knew his words were completely transparent. Lest didn't want to waste another second. He was ready to head out and take full advantage of this golden opportunity. The Al's Forest was split into 3 zones: the shallow, middle, and deep layers. Gad probably expected him to stick to the easiest part for a bit, but Lest knew he couldn't let his guard down for a second. As soon as they arrived, Lest summoned Geralt. It was time for their first real hunt together, and they weren't planning on playing it safe. One of the coolest side effects of the Tame skill is how it juices up the stats of both the tamer and the monster. The best part? The stronger Lest gets, the more that boost multiplies for Geralt. Honestly, it's a pretty broken setup. Lest keeps using his wooden training sword because he wants to knock monsters out and tame them rather than just ending them. If he actually needs to cut through something, he just activates a wind-cladding skill to turn that stick into a blade. He spends his days dodging and weaving through the forest, treating every attack as a chance to refine his footwork. That is, until a D-rank firebird shows up. It stays too high in the air for him to reach with his sword. Most people would be annoyed, but Lest just sees it as the perfect target for some long-range magic practice. He lines up a shot and lets a wind shot fly. It hits the bird dead center. That's when the level-up feeling starts hitting him. His body feels lighter and his mana is surging. This is exactly what he was hoping for. He finally gets that pleasant sensation of his body growing stronger. In the game, we didn't get experience just for taming a monster, so he has to actually take them down now to progress. Even better, he gets to share the experience from anything Geralt kills too. He spends the rest of the day grinding out his wind magic. By the time the sun starts going down, his growth speed is honestly getting kind of ridiculous. A full week passes, and even the powerful stray monsters in the shallow forest aren't a challenge anymore. He and Geralt have become a 2-man wrecking crew, making quick work of anything that crosses their path. Lest realizes he's hit a plateau. If he wants to keep leveling up, he needs to move into the middle layers where the real threats are. He still doesn't have official permission from Gad to go deeper, so he considers just sneaking off and doing it anyway. But he doesn't have to wait long. Gad calls him in and tells him that starting tomorrow, he's being sent even further into the forest. Les is actually pretty surprised. He figures Gad is getting impatient because he's surviving the shallow layers too easily. Gad plays it off like he just has high expectations, and Les just nods along, happy to take the new orders. The next morning, they finally head out. Now, they can explore the middle layers without having to hide from the family. The monsters here are a step up, high C ranks compared to the weaklings from before. But even these guys aren't enough to slow them down. Before long, Les has already reached B rank levels of strength. After another week of solid grinding, a new challenger finally steps out from the shadows. It's a Cyclops, a mid-B rank monster that was a massive pain to deal with back in the game. Les isn't even worried, though. He gives Geralt the signal to charge in and start the fight. He opens up with a wind shot to keep the giant off balance while he looks for an opening. Geralt lunges in, tearing into the Cyclops and giving it no room to breathe. Les follows up with a wind sever move, cutting right through the giant's tough hide like it's made of paper. The Cyclops tries to turn the tide by charging up its eye beam, a high-power attack that Les knows by heart. But instead of dodging, he decides it's time to test out a new high-tier skill called Cyclone. He catches the beam head-on, clashing his mana against the giant's attack in a massive explosion. The blast sends the Cyclops reeling. Geralt lets out a howl as the monster finally goes down for the count. That was the final push he needed. The giant collapses into a heap, and the experience points flood in. Les gives Geralt some well-deserved praise as he watches his level jump up once again. A new notification pops up. His Tame limit has increased. He can finally add a second monster to the team. He's already got his eye on a very specific target, and he's not planning on waiting for his father's permission to find it. He tells Geralt to take it easy for the night, because tomorrow they're going after the strongest opponent they've ever faced. It's the legendary dragon of this country. The very next day, they head deeper into the forest than they've ever gone before. Any B-rank monsters that try to jump them on the way are dealt with instantly. Nothing's going to slow him down now. Finally, they arrive. The place he's been looking for is right in front of them, and the real test is about to start. Les arrives at the ruins, feeling the presence he's been tracking. He is here, he says, with Geralt standing ready by his side. In the middle of the vast, quiet field stands the ancient stone ruin where the legendary beast is said to dwell. Suddenly, a massive roar rips through the air, and Les looks up to see the majestic, terrifying form of the black dragon descending. The dragon lets out an earth-shaking cry as it circles overhead, its dark scales casting a massive shadow over the grass. Looking at it up close, Les can't help but chuckle at the sheer, overwhelming pressure the creature radiates. It's incredible to think that this beast is still just a juvenile. Even in its incomplete state, its power is staggering. Right now, it's only a tenth of the size it will eventually become. Once fully grown, it would span over 100 meters in length. In the original game's story, this dragon was a tragic figure, enslaved by a demon lord's officer and forced to lay waste to the capital. It was a nightmare that even the main protagonist's party couldn't stop, a force of destruction that threatened the entire kingdom. However, after finally breaking free from its captor's control, the dragon used the last of its power to heal the world it had scarred. In its final moments, it spoke of its lineage as a divine guardian that was meant to protect people, not destroy them. It never wanted to be a weapon. After sharing its heartbreaking final words, the black dragon quietly passed away in the original timeline. That specific event was a forced loss that many players found frustrating, but the scene had always resonated deeply with Les. He had felt an emotional attachment to the dragon's tragic fate long before he ever dreamed of living in this world. That's why, the moment he realized he had been reborn as Les Albion, he knew he had to use his Tame skill to change the dragon's future. Having such a powerful ally would be amazing, but his real motivation is to save the beast from the tragic and it was destined for. He spent 4 months preparing for this day. Now, the legendary creature is finally before him, and he has the chance to rewrite its story. Dragons are the undisputed kings of mana in this world, capable of turning raw magical energy into devastating physical phenomena. In the original timeline, this dragon was force-fed mana to reach S rank, but as a juvenile, its power should currently be manageable. Les knows that with the strength he's built and Geralt's support, winning this battle is no longer an impossible dream. He gives the dragon a confident smirk, apologizing in advance for the fight they're about to have. The battle begins as the dragon prepares its first move, its massive form shifting with lethal grace. Even as a juvenile, the pressure it exerts is immense, making the very air around them feel heavy and thick with mana. With a determined shout, Les signals Geralt to begin their assault, and the two of them dive headfirst into the legendary fight. Les and Geralt spot their target, the legendary king of magic. The first mission is to get that dragon down to earth. Les launches a cyclone blast, multiplied for extra power. Geralt adds a howl as the wind tears through the forest. One flap of the dragon's wings is all it takes to blow the entire storm away. Les can't believe it was that easy for him. The beast dives. Les stands his ground, keeping his focus on the massive creature. It's charging a breath attack. A massive ball of pure destructive mana is forming right in front of him. The dragon lets it rip. Les knows that if he takes a direct hit, it's game over. Time to take the fight to his level. Les uses wind magic to levitate, matching the dragon's height. He buffs himself with physical enhancement and mana infusion, prepping for a heavy blow. Les drops a multiplied gravitation spell. The sudden weight slams the dragon into the ground. A massive explosion of dust and dirt as the dragon hits the floor. Les lands, panting. Even a hit like that barely seemed to leave a scratch on the king of magic. He doesn't let up and orders Geralt to follow through with a lunge. Geralt's claws can't even get through the scales. Standing right in front of it, Les feels the overwhelming pressure. The dragon stares him down, its presence filling the entire clearing. It lets out a low growl. Les just smirks, asking if that's all the legendary beast has got. Les says the real fight starts now. Geralt stays low, teeth bared. The dragon seems to accept the challenge, giving up on flying to focus on the fight on the ground. One slip in focus, and he's done for. Les knows he's walking a tightrope here. Strangely enough, he's having the time of his life. In the game, he only ever fought a demon-controlled version of this thing. The dragon lunges forward, showing off its massive jaws. This is the chance of a lifetime, and he isn't going to let it slip away. His blood is pumping. He tightens his grip on the wooden sword, ready for the next clash. He gets in a solid strike on the dragon's head, but it's like hitting a wall. He's determined to tame this black dragon, no matter how impossible it seems. He wants to save it from the sorrowful fate it has in the original game story. Les calls out to Geralt. It's now or never. They have no choice but to win. The attacks are coming fast, but Les notices large openings in the dragon's movements. Something feels off. For the King of Magic, this feels way too easy. It doesn't make sense. It's almost like the dragon isn't actually trying to hit them at all. Just like before, the dragon starts charging another breath attack. Les has a hunch. The mana gathers in its maw. Les stares directly into the dragon's eyes. The dragon fires the breath attack point blank. His survival instincts are screaming at him to dodge with everything he has. A massive white light swallows the entire area. Les stands perfectly still. He looks the dragon in the eyes through the blinding glare. Overpowering it won't work. To tame a beast like this, he has to prove his resolve. There's absolutely no way brute strength alone will be enough to win this. The dragon fires another burst. Les doesn't flinch. The heat is nearly unbearable. He starts to wonder if he misread the situation and is about to get vaporized. The light fades, and he's still alive. Geralt is growling, but the dragon hasn't finished him off. Les lets out a sigh of relief. He was right. The dragon never actually intended to hurt them. Those aimless attacks were just a test of his character. As Les suspected, the breath attack was just a hollow shell of magic, a final test to see if he'd stand his ground. Maintaining a massive breath like that requires insane magic control, something only the King of Magic could pull off. Lest realizes there must be a reason why the dragon went to such lengths to test him. A notification pops up. The dragon respects his strength and his desire to protect others, just like its ancestors once did. He was being tested to see if he was worthy of a pact, and the answer is finally in. The dragon never intended to harm an innocent person, making it clear it isn't the monster everyone thought it was. Because Les showed respect for its pride, the King of Magic has officially agreed to be tamed. Les reaches out a hand, assuring the beast that he came here to keep its pride intact, not to tarnish it. The dragon lets out a low growl of agreement as the pact begins. Les tells the dragon to fight by his side, sealing the bond with a touch. Suddenly, an explosion of power knocks him back. He's never felt anything like this before. An insane amount of magic power floods into his body, awakening his senses and boosting his strength to new heights. The taming is a success, and as a reward, he's granted a portion of the target's power. He officially acquires the Dragon's Blessing trait, which gives him high resistance and advanced magic control. In the game, this dragon was a master of all magic, though it seems Les hasn't unlocked those concept interference skills just yet. It turns out this version is still just a young one, meaning its potential for growth is absolutely through the roof. Les clenches his fist, realizing he'll only get stronger as the dragon grows. He can't just keep calling it Black Dragon forever, so he starts brainstorming a real name. He settles on War, and the dragon lets out a roar of approval. The beast roars into the sky, cementing its new identity. Les smirks, finally having the legendary King of Magic on his team. Geralt isn't left out either. Les gives the wolf some well-deserved praise for his help with the recruitment. He tells Noir that he's counting on him from now on. The dragon gives a simple nod. Geralt looks a bit jealous of the attention the new guy is getting. Les remembers the game's lore. This forest tends to gather evil magic that can summon demons. Demons are beings of pure soul and magic from another realm, and Les has a deeper connection to them than he'd care to admit. Noir's hidden purpose for staying in this forest was to purify that magic and stop any summons from happening. Les tells Noir to stay here for now and keep protecting the country from the shadows. He asks if Noir will lend him strength when the time truly comes, and the dragon lets out an affirmative cry. A permanent path is now open between the summoner and his beast, allowing them to rush to each other in an emergency. Les also plans to unlock more game abilities once he tames a few more monsters. It's time to head home. Geralt wags his tail, ready for the journey back after a very successful outing. On the way, Les decides to test out his new miniaturized skill on Geralt. The massive wolf shrinks down into a tiny, adorable fluff ball. Les can barely handle the cuteness. But the quiet moment is ruined when something jumps out of the shadows. A monster has found them. It's a gargoyle, and it doesn't look friendly at all. Based on its classification, this upper-tier B-rank beast is technically on par with Noir's current level. Its physical resistance is absurdly high, making it a nightmare for someone who usually relies on a wooden sword. Les has no choice but to cancel Geralt's miniaturization and get ready for a real fight. He launches a Cyclone Blast, hoping to catch the beast off guard with a quick strike. Gargoyles are weak to magic compared to physical hits, so he tells Geralt to hold the line while he preps his spells. He knows a couple of low-level shots won't do the trick. This is going to be a battle of endurance. Channeling mana suddenly feels 100 times easier than before. It's like the energy is just flowing through him. Les realizes this is the power of the Dragon's Blessing at work. It's boosted his magic control to an insane level. With this new capacity, he can definitely pull off spells way beyond the intermediate level. He calls Geralt over as he preps a massive hit. The gargoyle is caught completely off guard as Les unleashes a torrent of high-level wind magic. Arrow burst. Les shouts, pouring every ounce of his new power into the swirling vortex. The explosion is massive, ripping through the forest and leaving even Geralt stunned by the sheer force. As the smoke clears, there's absolutely nothing left of the gargoyle. It was a complete annihilation. Les stares at the destruction, barely believing he just one-shot a top-tier rank monster with that kind of firepower. He confirms it. Forming a pact with Noir didn't just give him a new ally, it massively expanded his own mana pool. This is the true potential of the Tame skill. By bonding with the legendary king of magic, he's basically hacked his way to top-tier power. With his sword skills and this insane magic capacity combined, he's finally feeling like he's on the right path. Les clenches his fist, determined to keep rising until he's the strongest being in this world. No more mid-game death for him. A few days later, back at the Albion household, Marquis Gad welcomes a very important visitor, Princess Charlotte. The Marquis is all smiles, eager to stay in the royal family's good graces as Charlotte accepts a gift from them. Charlotte, or Shero as she's known to her friends, has come specifically for the sword training she was promised. Some of the other nobles try to horn in on their tea time, but Shero isn't having any of it. She's only here for Les today. Les can see right through the other nobles' desperate attempts to suck up to royalty. He offers to show Shero to the training hall. The two of them head off to the grand training hall, leaving the frustrated social climbers in the dust. Shero immediately calls him out for being too formal. They agreed to be sword friends, after all. Even her attendant, Estella, mentions that they should be speaking more casually if they're going to be close training partners. Les agrees, calling her Shero. She smiles, happy to drop the royal pretenses while they're on the training field. Shero mentions she heard about his duel with the other lords. She's impressed, but she hasn't been slacking off herself. Les laughs it off, not wanting to get into the messy details of that lopsided fight. Shero gets her sword ready, eyes full of determination. She tells him she's been training hard for the last 2 weeks and won't lose easily. The match begins. Shero lunges forward with a speed that catches Les by surprise. Her form is incredible. She's already leagues ahead of where she was just a couple of weeks ago. Her talent is definitely blossoming. Les realizes this is the true potential of the main heroine. At this rate, she'd wipe the floor with those other noble boys. After a few intense rounds, they take a breather. Shero is panting, clearly having pushed herself to the limit. She admits that despite her hard work, she still feels like the gap between them is only getting wider. It's frustrating for her. But Shero isn't the type to get discouraged. She begs Les to teach her whatever secret training he's been doing. Les hesitates. He can't exactly tell her about taming or the dragon, especially since his father warned him not to trigger her trauma. He tries to think of something else he can share to help her grow without exposing his secrets. Then it hits him. He tells her about the midnight training, a set of grueling exercises from the game that boosts stats across the board. It involves weight training, mana refinement, and full sprints, all while carrying heavy sandbags. Shero is game for anything. She starts the training immediately, struggling with the weight but refusing to give up. Les hasn't skipped a day of this since his rebirth. Estella is deeply impressed. Seeing a noble like Les commit to such intense, grimy training is inspiring for her. Estella asks Les to drop the honorifics with her as well, telling him to just call her Estel from now on. Les agrees, even if it feels a little awkward since she's older than him. He turns back to Shero, ready to push her to the next level. Les and Shero finally wrap up their 3-hour training session. Shero's just happy she has a place to wash up after all that work. Les realizes they finished way earlier than planned. He doesn't want to hang around the mansion just for those annoying noble sycophants to show up and ruin the mood. So, he asks Shero if she's down for a trip to the castle town. She's immediately all in. The three of them head out, and before they know it, they're walking through the busy streets of the capital. Suddenly, a monster alarm goes off. Estella wants to stay back and guard Shero, but the situation's getting messy fast. Shero isn't having it. She insists that they'll be way safer if they all fight as a team. Les agrees and decides to split up. He tells Estella he'll pair up with Shero, since it makes the most sense to keep the strongest person by her side. He gives the signal, and they charge straight into the chaos. Shero's right behind him, ready to go. They jump into the fray, and the townspeople are shocked to see a couple of kids taking down orcs. They're relieved to see Lord Lest on the scene, but some of them are still worried if he can handle it. Just when they think it's clearing up, a massive fawn tiger leaps out right behind Shero. Les shouts a warning, realizing this thing is a mid-tier threat. Another monster blocks Les' path. He can tell they're actually coordinating their attacks, which is bad news. He realizes he's too far to reach Shero in time. He hates the idea of exposing his power, but he starts prepping a wind spell to blast the tiger before it can pounce. But before Les can lift a finger, Shero lets out a shout and fires off a holy arrow. Les is stunned. 2 weeks ago, she couldn't even activate this fast enough to fight a wolf, and now she's pulling it off like a pro. The arrow hits home, and the tiger goes down hard. Shero pumps her fist in victory. The monster is done for. Shero is beaming, looking over at Les for a job well done. Estella rushes over to make sure the princess isn't hurt. Les is still just processing how much Shero has improved in such a short time. The townspeople are cheering, calling Les their hero. But high above on a balcony, a hooded woman is watching them with a cold stare. Les watches Shero celebrate with the crowd. He started to wonder if she's just been hiding this kind of talent all along. The woman in the hood, Lav, breaks into a smirk. She thinks she's found something worth looking into. Back at the Albion mansion, things aren't so cheerful. Marquis Gad is fuming because Les came back from the Arse Forest without a single scratch on him. Gad is losing his mind. He can't wrap his head around how someone with a useless skill could survive the forest, let alone do it so easily. A servant bursts in with urgent news about the monster attack in town. Gad's jaw drops when he hears Les and the princess already handled it. Gad realizes he's in trouble. If Les keeps looking like a hero, people are going to start asking questions if he suddenly turns up dead. He slams his hands on the desk. He can't afford to wait anymore. Shero is a witness to his son's deeds now. He has to act tonight. He looks over a map of the deep layers of the forest. It's a death trap where even a sword saint could die if they aren't careful. Gad's decided. Tomorrow, he'll order Les to investigate the deep layers. He's certain his son won't survive this time. A voice from the shadows asks him if he's really that sure. Gad freezes, his heart skipping a beat. He was just muttering about how Les' existence is a threat to his position, and now he realized he's not alone. He spins around and shouts into the room, demanding to know who's there. Lav is standing right by the window, totally unfazed. Lav tells him straight up that his plan has a major flaw. She's dressed like an assassin, which only makes Gad more nervous. Gad's sweating. He didn't even sense her enter the room. Lav leans in and suggests they go with a different plan instead. Before he can react, Gad's vision starts to blur. His thoughts are getting hazy as she uses her magic to scramble his mind. He just nods along, saying sounds good. Lav smiles at him, calling him a good boy. She's got him right where she wants him. She promises that she'll be the one to finally expose whatever secret Les is hiding. The next morning, Charlotte and Estella are getting ready to head out. Shero is clearly bummed out because she wanted to train more with Les. But after the monster attack yesterday, they decided it's too risky for her to stay. They're making her leave as soon as possible. Instead of the usual slow carriage ride, they're using a teleportation circle to get home instantly. These things cost a fortune in magic and manpower to run. The fact that they're using one shows just how seriously the church and the royals are taking the threat. Les watches the preparations. In the games he played, these are just fast travel points, but here, they're a huge deal. He tells Shero it'll be fine. He praises her for how much she improved in just one day, both with her sword and her magic. He looks her in the eye and tells her that even without him, she's going to keep getting stronger. Shero just nods, looking a little emotional as she says goodbye. Shero's hyped, promising to train even harder so she could surprise him next time. Les just smiles and says he'll be waiting. As soon as she's gone, a maid catches Les and tells him his father's calling for him. He's already suspicious. The timing is just too perfect. Inside, Gad drops the hammer. He's ordering Les to go explore the deep layers of the Arst Forest, starting right now. Les knows exactly what's up. His father's hostility is thick enough to cut with a knife, and sending him there alone is basically an assassination attempt. Gad puts on a show of being a caring dad, saying he wouldn't send him into such a dangerous place without backup. He tells Lest he's already arranged for a guard to go with him. Lest is left wondering what kind of scheme the old man is cooking up now. The door opens, and this woman, Lav, walks in. She introduces herself as a B-rank adventurer and says she's his new escort. Lest just stares at her, clearly caught off guard. Lav notices and asks if there's something wrong or if he's just surprised to see her. He tries to brush it off, but Gad isn't taking no for an answer. He makes it clear that this is a direct order and Lest isn't allowed to refuse the guard. Gad keeps insisting it's just for his own safety. Lest has no choice but to bow and accept, even though he knows it's a trap. Lav gives him a sweet smile, saying she's looking forward to working together. Lest just gives her a cold, short answer. And just like that, the two of them head out toward the deep layers of the forest. About an hour later, they're deep in the middle layer. The trees are huge, and the whole place feels a lot more dangerous. Lest is doing some mental math. He thinks there's no way Gad just hired a random guard out of the goodness of his heart. He figures either she's there to kill him in an accident, or she's a spy sent to figure out how he's actually surviving these missions. Either way, he's labeling her as an enemy. He knows he has to keep his taming skill and his powerful wind magic a total secret. They've been walking for a while without seeing any monsters. Les tells her he's intentionally being careful to avoid any unnecessary trouble. Lav thinks it's a smart move, but as they push into the deepest part, she starts getting a little jumpy. She can feel the magic in the air changing. They enter the deep layer, and the forest goes dead quiet. Les suddenly senses something and tells her to shut it. He spots an or general. These things are B-rank, mid-tiers, and real trouble because they lead other monsters. There's a whole squad with it, nearly 10 orcs. Individually, they're not much, but together they're a problem. Les tells Lav to hang back. Since she's a mage, he'll play the decoy and draw their attention so she can blast them from a distance. He charges in, sword ready. He doesn't mind being the bait, since it means he doesn't have to show his real power yet. Lav raises her staff and fires off a fire javelin, sending a massive bolt of flame toward the group. The hit is solid, but the orc general is still up and looking pretty ticked off. Les notices something weird. It looked like Lav hesitated or looked away right at the critical moment. No time to think. He lunges forward and delivers a clean strike to the general's throat, taking it down for good. Afterward, Lav is all compliments, calling his fighting wonderful. Les just plays it cool and says he just finished the job. Lav then asks to step away for a minute, looking a little embarrassed. Les doesn't think much of it and tells her to go ahead. She's been gone for a while now, though. Les starts looking around, thinking he might need to go find her. He notices the forest has gone completely silent. He can't even hear a single bird anymore, which is a huge red flag. Suddenly, a massive ogre steps out from the shadows. This guy is the area boss of the deep layer. Les identifies it as an A-rank mid-tier ogre. He's genuinely confused why something this strong is out here. Aside from the black dragon, this thing is the undisputed king of the Arst Forest. In the game he played, ogres like this were never supposed to wander out of their designated zones. He wonders if the world is changing. The ogre doesn't give him a chance to think, swinging its massive club down and smashing the ground into pieces. Les barely manages to roll out of the way. He's stressed, realizing this thing's strength is the real deal. He thinks about the gap between ranks. He's beaten a B-rank gargoyle, but the jump to A rank is massive. In this world, the difficulty usually scales okay until you hit A rank, and then it just becomes a total nightmare. A single rank difference at this level is a massive wall. Ogres are famous for having both crazy offense and defense. Les is struggling to stay alive, barely dodging the ogre's relentless attacks. He knows his current strength isn't enough to end this. He knows he should hide his power, but he's out of options. He shouts for Geralt, summoning his partner to the field to finish this. Geralt leaps out with a roar, towering over the battlefield. Les knows they don't have much time before someone notices, so he shouts to his partner that they need to finish this fight in one go. Les and Geralt face off against a massive A-rank ogre. The monster is a total tank, using magical enhancement to make its body practically invulnerable. Les doesn't break a sweat, focusing his wind magic as he waits for the beast to make its move. Les kicks things off with a cyclone blast, but the ogre barely flinches. The monster swings, and Les just hangs in the air with a confident smirk. He calls out to Geralt, who's already diving in for the kill. Les analyzes the target. It's an A-rank mid-tier with insane physical enhancement and constant magic flow. He decides to test the monster's defenses with a quick pincer attack. Geralt lands a wind slash, ripping right through the ogre's side. The monster roars in agony, and Les is happy to see his strategy worked. The ogre goes berserk, slamming the ground and locking its eyes on Les. Les notices the beast is completely ignoring Geralt now. He thinks it's a pretty big mistake. He tells the ogre to stop underestimating his partner. Geralt prepares another high-speed dash. A second wind slash hits home, drawing even more blood. The ogre is reeling while Les just smiles at the chaos. He notes that while the wolf's activation is a bit slow, the power behind the hits is undeniable. He asks the monster if it still thinks it can ignore the predator at its back. The ogre howls in frustration as its situation gets worse by the second. Les gives Geralt a little praise for the solid work. He realizes the ogre only prioritized him because it didn't think the wolf was a threat. But now that the damage is fatal, the monster's combat power is falling apart. Les lunges back in, daring the beast to figure out who's the real threat. It's time to teach this thing a lesson. Geralt triggers wind coating, turning into a complete blur. The final pincer attack connects with a roar. A massive cross-slash tears through the ogre's chest. The beast finally hits the ground for good. A system message pops up. Les Tame limit has been upgraded to 3. Les pats Geralt, impressed they finished that off so quickly. Killing an area boss pays out big in experience, explaining the sudden limit increase. He sighs, wondering what to do next since there aren't many other good targets around here. He thinks back to Noir, the black dragon he tamed just the other day. Taming Geralt was more of a lucky coincidence, but he's proving his worth. He admits the ogre was a tempting prize, but the extra experience was a better call. Now he needs to focus on specific monsters that will help him survive the main story. The problem is that those targets are nowhere near his current territory. A sudden noise in the woods makes Geralt growl in warning. Lav runs onto the scene, sounding frantic as she asks if he's okay. She stops dead when she sees the massive corpse lying on the ground. The girl is shocked that he just soloed an A-rank monster without breaking a sweat. Les tries to play it off, claiming the beast was already half dead when he found it. Lav isn't buying it, looking closely at the fresh claw and fang marks. She suggests they head back since their investigation is done, then hands him a bottle of recovery potion. Lav hands Les the bottle, claiming it's just a simple fatigue recovery potion to help him rest after the fight. Les takes a swig without hesitation, but the moment the liquid hits his throat, he realizes something is very wrong. He collapses to the ground, and Lav's polite mask finally slips into a cold, mocking smirk. She can't believe he was stupid enough to drink paralysis poison so easily, calling the whole situation pitiful. Her form shifts as horns sprout from her head. She reveals her true identity as Reeb, an executive of the Demon King's army. Now that he's helpless, she declares that she's going to eliminate him with her own hands. Reeb stands over him, gloating and asking how that paralysis poison actually tastes. She mocks his upbringing, wondering if his noble parents forgot to teach him not to trust every stranger he meets. She laughs, deciding to give him a little farewell gift before sending him off to the afterlife. It turns out every monster attack lately, from the tiger to the ogre, was her doing just to investigate his hidden power. She was waiting for him to show even the slightest opening, and today, he finally did. She shuts down any further explanation, telling him that's as much info as a dead man needs to know. Reeb looks down at him, ready to enjoy her victory as the boy struggles on the ground. She tells him to curse his bad luck, but Les just gives her a slow, knowing smile from the dirt. To her absolute shock, Les suddenly stands up and brushes himself off like he was just taking a quick nap. Reeb's eyes go wide. There's no way he should be able to move a single muscle. She panics, screaming that the paralysis should have kept him down for at least another 30 minutes. Les calmly looks her in the eye and tells her that he was never paralyzed to begin with. A system window confirms that Dragon's blessing is active, making him completely immune to status ailments. He explains that the blessing he got from Noir gives him perfect magic control and total resistance to toxins. He admits he knew what she was up to from the start and only played along to get her to show her true colors. Reeb is fuming, refusing to believe a mere human could have seen through her perfect plan. Les starts reciting history, talking about the Great War between humans and demons from 1,000 years ago. He describes how the Demon King was defeated before splitting his soul into 10 fragments to escape. Those fragments were scattered across time, eventually inhabiting random newborn lives in the future. Then he drops the bombshell. Les harbors one of those soul fragments, which is why his useless skill is so broken. He calls her out, knowing her goal was to use the ogre to confirm his power so she could steal that fragment. He points out she used paralysis instead of something lethal because she didn't want to risk destroying the fragment. He mocks her, calling her the weakest, bottom-tier executive in the entire Demon King's army. Reeb is completely rattled now, screaming at him to tell her how he could possibly know all their secrets. Les keeps his internal thoughts to himself. He knows Reeb is the exact person who killed him in the original game. He remembers meeting her when she was still using the fake name Rav and having to suppress his reaction. In the original story, she actually succeeded in stealing the fragment and tried to fuse with it to become a god. She hit S-rank power for a moment, looking like she might actually win against the main characters. But her body wasn't a proper vessel, and the sheer power of the soul fragment caused her to literally blow up. Les looks at her with total contempt, thinking about how she ended up as nothing but a mess on the floor. He summarizes her entire existence as a failed executive who only served as a plot device for the real villains. Her only contribution was accidentally weakening the Demon King's soul before her pathetic explosion. He even mocks how popular she became in certain fan circles because of how artistically bad her death was. He thinks to himself that the nickname the players gave her, Smithereens-chan, actually feels a bit nostalgic now. Reeb is losing her mind, demanding to know how a human has access to top-secret demon information. Les just gives her a cold stare and tells her that it doesn't matter, since her luck has finally run out. Reeb snaps, deciding that if he's going to talk that much, she'll show him no mercy. She conjures a barrage of glowing magical swords, surrounding herself with lethal blades. Les recognizes her unique ability, transition magic, which allows her to transform physical matter into magic and vice versa. Reeb screams at him to prepare himself as she launches her first wave of attacks. Les realizes the real problem starts now. Reeb is an executive-level opponent, and he can't afford to let his guard down for a second. He knows her strength is equivalent to an A-rank upper-tier monster, making her even more dangerous than the ogre he just defeated. Les barely manages to dodge the high-speed, magical projectiles, feeling the air whistle as they pass. He remembers the details of her magic. She can freely change the form of magical power, creating and decomposing substances at will. He knows that if she even touches him with her magic, she could decompose his entire body into raw energy instantly. Reeb smiles coldly, complimenting his dodging skills while noting that she thought the last hit would have surely got him. Les grits his teeth, acknowledging that despite its constraints, her ability is incredibly troublesome to face alone. He quickly summons Geralt back into the fight, calling out the Wind Wolf's name as it appears by his side. Reeb mocks the move, asking him if he really thinks adding another mutt to the mix will change the outcome. She summons even more weapons, spears and swords, sending them hurtling toward the pair. Les commands Geralt to focus entirely on evasion, knowing they can't endure the raw power of her magic for more than a few seconds. He warns the wolf to stay far away from Reeb herself, fearing the instant decomposition effect of her touch. Reeb finds his precise countermeasures irritating, her expression twisting in annoyance. Les just smirks back, telling her he's honored by the praise as he continues to parry and dodge. The battlefield is a chaos of clashing steel and magical light as Reeb pours more power into her attacks. Geralt and Lest move in perfect sync, narrowly avoiding a lethal strike that shatters the ground beneath them. Lest knows there's no chance of winning if he keeps fighting at this distance. He needs to find a way to close the gap. With a defiant howl, Geralt charges forward into a whirlwind of wind and magic, providing the opening Lest needs. Reeb just laughs, asking if he really thinks an attack like that will do anything to her. She's surprised he's actually getting closer, but Lest is confident as long as he doesn't get tagged. Lest goes all in on speed, trying to keep her from getting a chance to counter. Reeb's taken aback by how sharp his strikes are. Let's give her a little smirk, and it's clearly starting to get under her skin. He knows if he forces her into close combat, he's got a real shot. Both he and Geralt charge right in. Suddenly, magic swords start raining down from above. Lest yells for Geralt to watch out. Reeb tells them not to think they've won yet. Lest isn't taking any chances and keeps his eyes locked on her. She summons a whole wall of weapons and fires them off at once. Lest manages to deflect one mid-air, noting that a normal mage wouldn't be able to pull off a counter like this. She's controlling all these weapons without even needing to chant. This is what makes Reeb's fighting style so dangerous. Lest tells Geralt to keep up the pressure and maintain this exact distance. Reeb is definitely losing the composure she had earlier. At this range, one mistake could end it for either of them. No matter how much magic she has, Lest knows her brain can only process so much information at once. He keeps pushing forward, looking for a gap at her defense for his next move. Reeb is pissed that he's actually trying to use magic right in the middle of her domain. Lest lets out a massive blast, catching her totally off guard. But it turns out it was just a smokescreen. Reeb can't see a thing through the haze. Lest signals Geralt to back off while he prepares to change tactics. Reeb is clearly getting sick of his tricks. A huge explosion of light pushes them back as Reeb starts to transform. Her eyes change, and a mark appears on her forehead as she calls out her ultimate transition coding. She's entering her Queen of Magic power mode. Lest isn't surprised at all. He's been expecting this. This was her ultimate move in the game. She's releasing every drop of magic power from her body at once. The Armor of Annihilation appears, a state that reduces anything it touches to pure mana. This is her absolute trump card. Reeb admits she's impressed he forced her to use this. Lest tries an arrow burst, but it doesn't look like enough. The attack does absolutely zero damage. Reeb just stands there, looking completely unfazed. In this state, she's basically invincible. No hero's magic in the game could actually hurt her like this. Lest warns Geralt to be careful. Touching her even for a second means instant death. Reeb tells him it's her turn now. Lest notices she hasn't gotten a soul fragment yet. This mode drains her stamina fast. Without that fragment, her power output is lower than it was in the game. Lest wraps wind around his legs to boost his speed and dodge a rush. Reeb is shocked that he can actually outrun her at that speed. She calls him a fool and sends out a bunch of magic whips to shut him down. These whips are basically extensions of her hands. Lest barely dodges the barrage. He swings back with a wind-coating wind slash. A smirk returns to his face. His wind magic is actually holding its own against her power. Reeb is losing it. She can't believe he deflected her attack so easily. She tells him miracles don't last forever and promises to prove it right now. She launches an even bigger wave of whips, and Lest looks genuinely worried. The forest is getting torn to shreds by the impact. Lest and Geralt are on the run. Lest tells Geralt to just hang in there. They're definitely on the defensive now. He knows this mode burns through her mana like crazy. He's just waiting for the perfect moment to turn things around. Reeb's magic power is finally starting to dip. Lest knew that if he could just drag this out, her massive reserves would eventually hit their limit. But things are still looking rough on his end. He and Geralt are completely spent, and one wrong move here would be the end of them. They're standing their ground in the middle of a wrecked forest, trying to figure out who's going to collapse first. Reeb isn't impressed, though. She calls him pitiful for just running around in confusion without being able to land a single counter. She tells him to just give up already, looking down on him with that smug grin. Everyone is gasping for air. The entire clearing has been leveled, and the fatigue is clearly catching up to both sides. Reeb admits it was a pain holding back just to make sure she didn't kill him before getting the Demon King's soul fragment. Les just stares back, not giving her the satisfaction of a reaction. She's convinced that, even in her worn-down state, she has more than enough left to finish off two battered opponents. She reminds him that there's an absolute, insurmountable difference in their power. She was just waiting for them to run out of hope. Les actually agrees with her. He thinks the outcome of this fight was decided the second it started. Looking at Geralt, he knows they're both nearly out of magical power, while Reeb has several times more remaining. Reeb knows they won't survive another round of her magic whips. She's ready to end this. But Les suddenly stops her. He asks if he can ask one last thing, telling her that the board is finally set. He reveals the big twist. He saw through all her plans from the beginning and was just playing along to lead her here. Reeb is actually a bit frustrated that her performance wasn't as convincing as she thought, but she doesn't see how it matters now. Les asks her why she thinks he'd bother doing something so risky instead of just launching a surprise attack. She looks at him, genuinely confused as to what he could possibly be planning. He tells her straight up. He chose to lure her into his own territory. Reeb thinks it's a joke. She doesn't see how being in a forest he knows well gives him any kind of advantage. Then he drops the first bomb. He asks how she thinks he managed to avoid her paralysis poison in the first place. She starts to lose her cool, shouting that it doesn't matter if he had some lucky countermeasure. Les just gives her a sharp smile and tells her the answer is a blessing. He stands tall in front of his wolf, mentioning that it's something the demon army should be very familiar with. Reeb's face goes pale as she realizes what he's implying. She knows there's only one creature in these lands powerful enough to grant a blessing that advanced. A massive, terrifying shadow starts to loom over the entire clearing, blocking out the sun. From the shadows, the black dragon himself finally makes his grand entrance. Reeb can barely even scream the words. She's staring up at a literal legend. Les just looks at her and gives a cold welcome to his domain. Moore lets out a low growl right in her face. This is the territory Les was talking about. Les notices that Noir has actually grown quite a bit since he last leveled up, standing at a massive 15 meters now. The woman who called herself Rav is completely frozen in terror. Les flashes back to the moment he decided to eliminate her. He knew if he didn't, things would only get worse. The worst-case scenario was her escaping and telling the demon army about his special taming abilities. He knows he's no match for the other executives yet, which is why he has to finish Reeb off right here. He remembers from a game that Reeb was always incredibly cautious, only attacking when her enemy's monsters were already dead. She's the type who won't even start a fight unless she's 100% sure she's going to win. He literally studied her character description to understand exactly how she thinks and moves. That's why when the ogre attacked earlier, he didn't call Noir to help or try to run away. He deliberately fought with just Geralt, making it look like they were barely scraping by. He wanted to trick her into thinking that was the limit of his power, making her feel safe enough to finally make her move. It was all according to plan. Reeb only revealed her true identity and challenged him because she thought she could easily crush him with brute force. Little did she know, she was dancing in the palm of Les' hand. Between his knowledge of her personality and the game's events, he'd already set two major moves in motion, starting with that ogre attack. Through the mental link of his Tame skill, Les had already called for Noir's assistance, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal his trump card. He'd had the dragon hiding nearby the entire time, suppressing his massive presence so Reeb wouldn't suspect a thing. Every struggle, every desperate retreat. It was all just to lure Reeb into this exact spot so he could finish her off once and for all. Les gives her a cold, triumphant look. He asks if she's finally put the pieces together, that the legendary black dragon is completely under his command. Reeb can't even process it. She's screaming that a human controlling a dragon is something that just shouldn't be possible. Les isn't interested in her excuses. He tells her that if she wants to call herself the queen of magic power, He's happy to introduce her to the real king. He gives the order, and Noir prepares his ultimate attack, Armor of Annihilation. Reeb can only watch in horror as the dragon's maw begins to glow with world-ending power. Noir unleashes a devastating blast of pure energy, turning the entire clearing into a sea of light. Reeb tries to throw up a defense with her whips, but it's like trying to stop a tidal wave with a screen door. She's still in denial that any mere human could have this kind of authority. As the blast consumes her, she realizes too late that her entire strategy was flawed from the start. This was never the battle she thought it was. The forest is rocked by a massive, blinding explosion as Noir's power completely levels the area, bringing the fight to a violent end. The whole area is swallowed by a massive explosion of light and mana. As the dust settles, Reeb is left kneeling on the scorched earth, barely able to stay upright. She's completely rattled, wondering how a human could possibly wield that much power. Les notes her armor took the brunt of it, but she's clearly at her limit. Reeb tries to pull herself together, but Les isn't giving her a second to breathe. He signals his Tames to get ready. Geralt and Noir launch themselves forward as a massive wind blade slices through the air toward the demon. Reeb is desperate now, convinced that if she can just tank this next hit, she can find a way to win. Les just stands there calmly, telling her straight up that this is where she falls. She tries to act tough, asking if he really thinks his attacks can still hurt her. Les just smiles. He starts gathering a massive amount of dense, compressed mana around his wooden blade. Reeb stares in horror as the air around him starts to swirl into a violent vortex. He pours every bit of his remaining mana into the weapon, and the pressure is insane. Les announces that the prep is finally done. Reeb looks like she's seen a ghost. The destructive power gathering in his hands is enough to rival a full-on dragon breath. He knows the sheer speed of his swing is only going to amplify the carnage once he lets go. Les reflects on how he's been refining this specific power since the day he reincarnated. In this moment, he puts his absolute trust in the sword. While his usual wind slash is all about precision, this new move is built to crush everything in its path. Reeb realizes she's in real trouble. A demon army executive falling in a place like this? It's unthinkable. He readies the stance, the wind coating his blade reaching its peak. He brings it down, storm sword. The impact is catastrophic, shattering the ground and Reeb's remaining defense. Reeb is crumpled in the middle of a massive crater, barely able to breathe. Les looks down at her. She tries to threaten him, saying the other demon executives will come for his head if he kills her. Les shuts that down immediately. He knows she's alone and nobody is coming to help her. He hesitates for a second because, despite being a demon, she looks like a human he can actually talk to. But he remembers where he is. This isn't Japan anymore. He has to make the tough calls to survive. Reeb tells him to just get it over with quickly. She looks like she's accepted her fate. But then, a system window pops up. Reeb is shouting that she'll never beg for her life. In reality, her inner thoughts are doing the exact opposite. She's screaming that she doesn't want to die. The system gives Les a choice. Reeb can now be tamed. Do you want to do it? Les is completely caught off guard. He's staring at the window like it's a glitch. In the game, demons were never something you could tame. This is a total curveball. He starts overthinking it. This wasn't in the meta-knowledge he brought with him from his old life. He remembers the two conditions for taming. You have to beat them, and they have to want to serve. Demons are usually too proud to ever serve a human, which is why it was impossible before. But Reeb is different. She wants to live more than she cares about her pride. Les stares at her, weighing it out. He realizes the game info he has isn't the absolute law of this world. There are blind spots. Her transition magic is honestly too good to pass up. It has insane potential for whatever he plans next. He's worried his party is getting a bit too magic-heavy, but he decides her utility makes up for it. Les decides to make her a deal. He doesn't want any traitors on his team, so she has to be 100% in. He tells her flat out, depending on her answer right now, he might spare her life. Reeb tries to maintain her front, but she's clearly shaken by the proposal. Les just waits for her to break. Reeb tries to maintain a shred of dignity, saying she's generous enough to at least hear him out. Les doesn't waste any time and gets straight to the point, asking her if she's willing to serve him. He explains that his taming skill isn't just limited to monsters. He can command demons too. Reeb admits it's not the worst deal, but she wonders if he can actually trust her not to turn on him. She points out that she could just fake being loyal and betray him later, even though her inner thoughts are screaming for mercy. Les just smiles, telling her she forgot one thing. He can see right through her heart. He tells her resistance is futile and asks her what she's really thinking right now. Inside, she's absolutely panicking, regretting that she even tried to act cool in front of him. Les is totally bluffing about the mind reading, but Reeb is falling for it hook, line, and sinker. He explains that a special pathway forms between him and anyone he tames, allowing them to share intentions. This means if she ever plots a betrayal, he'll detect it and deal with it instantly. He gives her the ultimatum one more time, and she finally gives in, agreeing to serve him. She promises to do whatever he wants as long as he lets her live. Les puts a hand on her head and tells her to reform herself and serve him faithfully. Reeb isn't exactly thrilled about the head pat, but she accepts it silently. Les feels a sudden surge of power as the taming process finishes. The system confirms the success, and he officially gains transition magic from his new servant. Since this is his third successful tame, he also unlocks a bonus skill called mimicry. Mimicry lets him change his own appearance or the appearance of his tames by consuming mana. It's a powerful tool for blending in, even if it can't change someone's form completely. Les is hyped about the new haul, while Reeb is just depressed that her life as a demon executive is over. He figures she'll get used to the situation eventually and turns to his other companions. He gives a big thanks to Geralt and Noir, acknowledging that he couldn't have one without them. The two tames let out happy roars and barks, celebrating the hard-earned victory. Noir takes off back into the wild, and Les calls for everyone else to head back to the mansion. He starts dragging Reeb along by her horns, ignoring her complaints about it hurting. Now that he's tamed her, the real challenge is figuring out how to keep her close without getting caught. Even with the mental link, he still worries about possible betrayal or accidents if they aren't careful. He suggests she live in the extra-dimensional residence with Geralt, but Reeb isn't interested in staying in some tiny shack. She'd rather stay at an inn, which Les finds pretty spoiled for a former enemy. Geralt isn't too happy about it either. Joking aside, if she won't stay in the subspace, she'll have to find a way to live at the mansion. The true value of transition magic isn't just in a fight. It's how useful it is for different situations. They can use a technique called resonance to sync their mana with an opponent and subtly guide their thoughts. This would let them make Gad accept things without even realizing he's being influenced. It could even be used to hide a monster's mana entirely, making them invisible to the surroundings. Les realizes just how paranoid Gad is, going as far as hiring an assassin to watch him. If that's the game his father wants to play, Les is more than ready to respond with his own measures. They get back to the mansion and report to Gad that nothing out of the ordinary happened in the woods. Gad isn't satisfied and orders Reeb to stay behind so he can hear more details about the investigation. Reeb uses transition magic to look like a servant and tells him she stayed close to Les to find any openings. It works perfectly, giving them a legitimate reason for her to stay at the mansion for now. A few days pass, and Les is suddenly snapped out of his thoughts by someone shouting at him. In the palace gardens, Reeb struggles with her new life, confused by the basic chores assigned to her. Les reminds her that the laundry needs to be finished first if she wants it to dry. Reeb grumbles under her breath, assigned as Les' personal servant and tasked with endless chores in her spare time. She finds the commoner tasks beneath someone of her former status. A senior maid catches her slacking off, scolding her for her attitude. Les watches from a distance, amused by Reeb's unexpectedly clumsy and ditzy side. Leaving the maids to their work, Les decides to head toward the training grounds for some exercise. He hears Reeb being scolded again for her lack of manners toward her seniors. He reflects on how much stress Reeb must be under. After all, She was once a commander in the Demon King's army, but now she's being forced to hold back and take orders. Suddenly, someone calls out to him from behind. Les stops in his tracks, wondering who could be looking for him in the gardens. A young girl stands there, looking nervous and clutching her hands to her chest. Les recognizes her immediately as his younger sister. This is Rain Albion, Les' younger sister by 1 year. Like him, she is the daughter of the Marquis's deceased second wife. Les is genuinely surprised. In the original game and his memories before reincarnation, Rain was only ever a supporting character who never went out of her way to speak to him. They were never close as siblings. Les had always kept his distance, and since his reincarnation, the gap between them only seemed to grow as he focused on his own survival. The Albion family has an old custom where only those who have completed the divine oracle ceremony can dine together. Since they were often separated, they had very few opportunities to even see each other. Seeing her looking so flustered, Les asks what's wrong. Rain gasps, her eyes wide as she struggles to find the words to explain her presence. She tells him that she's been hearing rumors about him lately, how he defeated Lord Edward and Sid Ward, and even cleared monsters that appeared in town. She looks at him with admiration, admitting that she also wants to become strong like him. She wants to know if he can help her figure out what she should do. With a blush on her face, she confesses her deep desire to follow in his footsteps. Les is taken aback by her sudden earnestness and the light in her eyes. When he asks why she'd want to be like him, she explains that she thinks he's amazing for never giving up and working hard regardless of the circumstances. Les understands exactly where she's coming from. Like him, Rain has always had a poor standing in the family. Their father's first wife, Zila, treated their mother as nothing more than a concubine. With the rest of the family taking the first wife's side, Rain grew up shy and withdrawn. Growing up in such a hostile environment had caused her to lose hope in her own future. She had resigned herself to a bleak fate, feeling as though there was no escape from her family's prejudice. She looks down, her expression full of sorrow. But then she saw Lest, who shared her circumstances and was given a useless skill, continue to work hard and achieve steady results. It gave her a small spark of hope. Lest realizes that what Rain is truly seeking isn't just a way to get stronger, but a way to believe in herself again. She wants to know the reason why he can keep pushing forward. Even in this hopeless situation, she's looking for a path forward. Her determination is clear, even through her nervousness. Les knows he can't tell her the whole truth, that he's a reincarnated person or that his tame skill is actually a cheat. He has to find another way to inspire her. He puts his hands on her shoulders, startling her. He tells her there are only 2 ways to revive a down spirit, and he's going to show her one of them. With a bright, confident smile, Les declares that they're going to train together. Rain is completely shocked by his sudden enthusiasm. They head to the small training hall in the Albion residence. Rain finishes her warm-up exercises, looking a bit tired already but ready to start. Les tells her to copy his movements, and they start with some basic strength training. Rain tries her best to keep up with his push-up routine, grunting with the effort. As he watches her train, Les is reminded of a defining scene from the original story. He reflects on why his character was called the Evil Noble. It wasn't just because he opposed the protagonist. It was because he committed a truly terrible sin in the middle of the game's story. In the original timeline, Les went berserk and slaughtered his entire family with his own hands. The image of him standing over their bodies haunts his memories. The original story never revealed why Les spared Rain, though he wonders if it was because they were both children of the second wife. But Rain was special for another reason. She possessed the highest tier skill for a swordsman, Divine Sword. It was a skill that surpassed even the Sword Saint, title held by their father and eldest brother. In truth, Rain was the most naturally gifted swordsman in the entire game. Her potential was limitless, far exceeding the expectations placed on someone of her standing. After Les' death in the original game, she wielded her sword only once in a certain event, but that single display of genius was enough to cement her legendary status. Even though she was younger than the protagonists, she could effortlessly cut down powerful monsters with her overwhelming talent. It was, in every sense, a cheat-level ability. Rain once said that Les started acting strange shortly after she awakened the divine sword. He wonders if her awakening and his original self's rampage were somehow connected. Rain is scheduled to be granted divine sword during the oracle ceremony a few months from now. Les realizes that if he starts training her now, she will be incredibly strong by then. Rain growing stronger fits perfectly with Les' goals. He tells her it's time to move on to sword training next, which catches her off guard. She's surprised by the shift, but Les is determined. He hopes that this training will help her gain even a little bit of confidence in her own abilities. They start sparring, and Les is immediately impressed by her natural movements. She's already moving far better than he did when he first reincarnated. Rain gives it her all with a determined shout. After a while, they wrap up the session. Rain is completely exhausted, panting and covered in sweat, but she manages a grateful, "Thank you very much." Les praises her for a great first time, admitting he toned down the intensity, but noting she still kept up until the end. Rain shyly asks if she can come back to train again, and Les happily agrees. Rain beams with a bright, happy smile, thanking Les profusely for the training session. Despite the exhaustion, she seems genuinely invigorated by the experience. Meanwhile, in another part of the mansion, Reeb is stuck doing the manual labor she so despises, scrubbing clothes in a wooden tub. Reeb's face is a mask of pure frustration as she listlessly goes through the motions of cleaning, laundry, and cooking. She can't believe that as a former demon executive, she's been reduced to such mundane human tasks. She screams inwardly about how she should never have agreed to this arrangement. Her original plan was to serve as both a bodyguard and a maid to gain Les trust before finding the perfect moment for an assassination. But the reality of the work is far more grueling than she anticipated. Les approaches her while she's working, noting that she looks incredibly frustrated. Reeb snaps back, confirming her irritation while clutching her laundry tightly. To her surprise, Les offers her a deal. He says he'll tell his father that she's a trustworthy person when the time is right, which should eventually reduce the number of chores she's assigned to do. Reeb's eyes light up, and she gets right in his face, demanding that he keep his promise. Les leans back, slightly overwhelmed by her sudden intensity and how close she's gotten. As Reeb gets back to hanging the laundry, Les mentions that he wants to discuss their plans going forward. Reeb is curious, wondering if they'll continue hunting monsters in the Alls Forest as they did before. But Les reveals that things have changed since he tamed her, and he's thinking of taking a different approach. With Reeb now under his control, Les looks forward to using her transition magic and mimicry skills for his next move. He tells her they're heading to the Adventurers Guild under the guise of exploring the forest. The former demon executive is stunned by the sudden plan. As they walk through the woods, she asks why a high-ranking noble would ever need to step foot in a guild. Les explains he's not looking for work. He needs the identification to enter a dungeon. Dungeons are dangerous, isolated spaces, but they're the only place to find the gear he needs to get stronger. In this world, just like in the games he knows, conquering dungeons is the key to massive growth. He wants to bypass the slow grind of hunting regular monsters and focus on gathering powerful items. Reeb points out that finding a good dungeon is hard, but Les just smiles, already having a location in mind. His knowledge as a reincarnator means he knows every secret, trap, and monster in dungeons that haven't even been found yet. She still doesn't understand what any of this has to do with needing a new ID. Les reminds her that as an Albion, his every move is tracked by his father's informants. If Gad Albion finds out he's wandering into dungeons, he'll be dragged back to the mansion immediately. To avoid that, he needs to register at the guild under a completely different name. Reeb worries the townsfolk will recognize his face, but he's already thought of a solution. He activates his mimicry skill, and his black hair instantly shifts into a bright blonde. It's a perfect disguise since black hair is a unique trait of the Albion men. They head into town, planning to pick up some common clothes and weapons to finish the look. After a quick change, Les stands ready, looking like a completely different person. Reeb finds his rookie adventurer look hilarious and gives him a sarcastic thumbs up. He carries two swords, one for his public image as a warrior and an extra wooden sword for serious business. The wooden blade actually holds magic much better than metal ones, making it his most practical tool. They reach the Adventurers Guild, a lively hub filled with mercenaries and travelers. A cheerful receptionist greets them at the counter, asking what she can do for them. Les keeps it simple, stating they're both here to register as adventurers. She hands over the paperwork, asking for their names and roles. They sign in as Ares the swordsman and Lav the mage, officially burying their old identities. The receptionist explains the ranking system, noting they could take a rank-up exam if they want to start higher than the bottom F rank. She produces a mana measuring device to test Reeb's magical aptitude. Les notes how much more practical this system is compared to the formal academy exams. He knows that with their combined power, hitting A rank would be a walk in the park. However, he decides to start at the bottom to avoid unwanted attention, until a group of veterans starts mocking them. A massive adventurer named Gord Strongblade marches over, looking down on the newcomers. Les sizes him up, sensing a hostile aura coming from the B-rank warrior. The receptionist tries to step in, but Gord pushes past, clearly intent on causing a scene. He towers over the young noble, trying to use his size to get a reaction. Les remains unbothered, even though Gord is putting on quite a show of intimidation. The veteran sneers at their cheap equipment, assuming they're just cocky kids who bought gear off the street. He offers to give them a harsh lesson on what it really means to be an adventurer. Gord is suddenly silenced by a loud cracking sound from the counter. The mana measuring crystal has shattered into hundreds of tiny pieces. Reeb casually apologizes, claiming she only put a little mana into it before it broke. The receptionist can barely process the sight of the shattered device. Lav casually points out that this should be more than enough proof of her ability. Turning her attention to the massive adventurer, the former demon commander tells Gord that she's the one he has to deal with now. A wave of shock ripples through the guild hall. Gord, who is just full of bravado, is now sweating under Lav's intense gaze. Lav gives him a final chance to apologize for his earlier behavior. Gord is completely frozen, realizing he just picked a fight with someone way out of his league. To everyone's surprise, Gord bursts into tears of joy, absolutely thrilled to see a newcomer break the measuring device. The receptionist, Anna, isn't having any of it and shouts at Gord to stop bothering the new recruits. Gord tries to defend himself, claiming he was only trying to give them some friendly advice. Anna isn't buying it, mocking everything from his tone to his massive build. The harsh words break Gord's spirit as he collapses in tears while the rest of the guild laughs at his expense. Watching the scene unfold, Les wonders if the big guy actually had good intentions, despite his rough delivery. Once things settle, Les pulls Lav aside. He mentions he's surprised she went so far as to use her transition magic just to defend him. He notes her raw power is high, but breaking the crystal required that extra magical boost she normally keeps hidden. Lav turns away with a blush, claiming she only did it because seeing her master look weak would be an insult to her own reputation. Despite her heroic moment, Les finds her defensive attitude even more annoying than Gord's loud mouth. Gord recovers enough to properly introduce himself as a B-rank adventurer known as Strongblade. He gestures to his teammates, revealing they're the Steel Fangs, one of the top parties at this guild. Les and Lav keep their cover, acknowledging the party before they head out for their mission. One of Gord's allies reminds him they have a carriage to catch, urging the big guy to stop dawdling. As they leave, Les lets out a sigh, feeling more exhausted from the guild's drama than if he'd actually cleared a dungeon. They wrap up their business and officially register as F-rankers. To avoid drawing any more eyes, they claim the broken device was just a weird coincidence. Anna, the receptionist, still looks like she's trying to piece together what just happened. Les spends some time scanning the quest board until his eyes land on a report about a newly discovered dungeon. He carefully examines the details of the investigation quest. After a short wait, they finally receive their official adventurer cards for Ares the warrior and Lav the wizard. With their IDs in hand, they head out of the guild hall. Les tells her he's already decided which dungeon they're going to hit first. Lav asks if they're going right now, and Lest explains they'll need a carriage to reach the town closest to the site. They secure a spot on a wagon, leaving the city behind as they begin their journey. They spend the next few hours traveling through the rugged landscape, moving closer to the heart of the mountains. They eventually arrive at the foot of an A-rank dungeon, a place that would normally terrify any rookie. The entrance leads to the infamous Temple of Deception. Les recalls his gaming days, remembering this place as a notorious trash gimmick dungeon that was impossible to beat on a first try. The layout is packed with lethal traps, which is why the completion rate sits at a measly 30% despite the high-tier rewards. Lest hardens his resolve, knowing that despite the risks, they have to head inside to get the gear he needs. They step into the dark corridor, the air growing colder as they leave the sunlight behind. Lav is immediately overwhelmed by the maze of paths, noticing several sets of footprints that seem relatively fresh. Les decides they'll keep their disguises and hold off on summoning any monsters to avoid leaving a trail. He isn't worried about the maze, though, because his memories from his past life act like a perfect walkthrough guide. He explains that the monsters here only go up to B rank, which should be manageable for them. Confident in their power, Lav boasts that they'll reach the deepest level in no time. She starts marching ahead, but Les shouts a warning just as she approaches a specific doorway. A massive explosion rocks the corridor, engulfing the entire passage in fire and smoke. Les just stares deadpan at the disaster, knowing exactly what triggered it. He notes that half the paths here are traps, and Lav managed to find the one filled with lethal landmines on her very first step. Les can only watch in disbelief as Lav manages to trigger a trap on her very first step. He sighs, wondering if her luck is truly that abysmal. He jokingly waves farewell, telling her he'll cherish the short time they spent together. Lav, covered in soot but very much alive, screams that she isn't dead yet. Les tells her to stay sharp, admitting he really thought she'd been blown to bits. He keeps to himself the fact that in the game, that blast would have definitely been fatal. As they venture deeper into the stone halls, Les finally senses something ahead. A group of trap rabbits, classified as lower B-rank monsters, suddenly block their path. Lav seems almost amused by the small creatures, but Les can't help but feel a bit underwhelmed by their appearance. He knows that for high-level fighters like them, these rabbits are barely a threat, provided they aren't inside a dungeon full of gimmicks. Just as the rabbits leap into action, Les notices the floor tiles shifting. He screams for Lav to fall back immediately. A massive surge of energy erupts between them, nearly catching Lav in its wake. Les explains that the dungeon itself is designed to work in tandem with the monsters. He points out that the trap rabbits don't just wait for people to trip on wires. They actively lure intruders into the mechanisms. While they could easily crush the monsters with brute force, Les emphasizes that conquering a dungeon is all about managing their resources. Much to her horror, Les orders Lav to act as bait to draw the rabbit's attention. She protests, reminding him she's a wizard, but he won't take no for an answer. Lav grumbles, but does as she's told, stepping into the line of fire. Behind her, Les finds the hidden trigger on the wall and prepares to strike. With a well-timed press, he activates a volley of wall-mounted spears that tear through the rabbits in a matter of seconds. Lav is left shaking, screaming about how reckless that was, while Les casually points out that one of the monsters actually managed to survive the trap. To finish the job, Lav uses her transition magic to conjure a blade and slice through the last remaining rabbit. As the monster vanishes, a small item drops in its place. Les finds it fascinating to see game mechanics like loot drops manifesting in the real world. He briefly explains the distinction between open exploration zones and structured dungeons like this one. With the battle over, he demands the rewards, much to Lav's annoyance.